Good morning. Hope you are all well. And it's the first day when all the kids, I think, are back at school, except, of course, those kids which are already off school because of COVID. You see, we've already started with that. So today's learning is dedicated in memory of Leah Bas Feivel, Tzivi Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavin, Shlom ben Yisrael Morris, Eliezer ben Shmuel Teret, Eliezer Shalom ben Avram Shmuel Beres, Tipera Fekele Bas Reuven Baruch, Shalom ben Eli ben Bas Feivel, from Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel Malka Bas Binyamin, as well as Hannah Hart, Yaakov ben Reuven Myers, Leah Bas Feivel Appelman. And I think that's all the outsides for today. We wish each and every one of their respective families long life and only simchas. Wonderful to see you all this morning. And we are now continuing as we head towards the end. Yes, the end of the laws of Teshuva. We have less than 2 weeks now to Rosh Hashanah, and we will easily complete a synopsis of the chapters of Teshuva, which will stand us in good stead in terms of Rosh Hashanah. So far we've been speaking about how we do Teshuva, okay? And now we find that the Rambam, Maimonides, discusses about the judgment itself. We know that after we pass from this world, so there is an ultimate judgment between us and the Almighty. It's not a game, right? There are repercussions. There has to be a reckoning for our actions. Every year there's a reckoning, but ultimately there are consequences for us. So, says the Rambam, we're in chapter 8. And good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm how rude of me. How rude am I? Good morning, Peter, David, Richard, Rachel, Mervyn, Powell, Caroline, Michelle, Colin, Richard. Have I done everyone? I hope so. Good morning to each and every one of you. Lovely to have you here. I was going to say on this bright and sunny day, but not quite. So the place that is stored up for the righteous, okay, when we think about our loved ones, we wonder where they are, where they've gone, right? So we know that the guf, the body, right, the casing of the person is buried in the ground, but that's not the true person. The true essence of the person, it does not get buried in the ground. The soul is something spiritual, something which is intangible. So that certainly doesn't get buried in the ground. That's something that stays forever. And let's try and explain it a bit more. Of course, we are talking about rather lofty ideas today, so you'll have to stick with it as we try to put into physical terms, palatable terms, things which are quite difficult for us to understand. Okay. So so the world of only goodness, the next world that we speak about after one departs this world, is a world where there is only goodness. Okay, and that is what is written in the Torah. Leman yivtav lach uvarachta yamim, that it should be good for you and you should have length of days. Okay, so schar hatzadikim. Let's just move on a bit. Hu sheyizku lenoyim zeh v'yeh b'toiv zeh. This is the crucial part. The punishment for a wicked person, an evil person, is so crucial words that Maimonides says. Maimonides says, and we know from Jacob that it's written about Jacob, our forefather, that Jacob never died, right? That Jacob lived on. Now, how can it be that Jacob never died if we know, and it's documented in the Torah, that his children, his sons, escorted him down from Egypt to the land of Israel, and they buried him in Israel, right? They buried him in the cave of Machpelah. How can it be that the Torah tells us on the one hand that people are buried, right, and yet we are saying that they live on? And the answer is that if we were to imagine, I guess, what's the best analogy? If we were to take a fridge, okay, probably not a good example, but we'll go with a fridge. We could have used the phone with the SIM card, but we'll go with the fridge today. You imagine a fridge. So you have the physical casing, right, of the fridge, and then you have the electricity that is pumped into the fridge that gives it its power, which is what makes it cold, okay? simply speaking. I don't need to get technical. I know you all know the technical side. So the idea is that as long as there is that energy that's being pumped into the fridge, then the fridge works. It's cold, right? As soon as the energy stops, you unplug it. What happens? The fridge stops working, right? And all you have is a shell. You have a casing. You have a metal box standing there, right? It's functionless. So it is with us. We have our physical bodies, right, which are there in order to facilitate our working in the world. This is not our physical being. This is not really who we are. This is not the essence of the person. When we talk to people, when we interact, this is just an outer shell of us. The being, the essence of the person, right, is something which is the spirit. Okay. Now, the question which we have is, well, does everyone live on or not? We know that it says in many places that Kol Yisrael, all of Israel, Yesh Lehem Chelek Le'olam Haba, have a place in the next world. Well, if all of Israel has a place in the world to come, then how can it be that we find in several places in Maimonides and other works that people were cut off, right? They were lost, right? They were judged. They were sent to Gehenna. There's a world of, right, the Gehenna, which we call hell. There is a place where people go after this world. After they've been judged, they've got to be punished. So the answer is, firstly, there is the short term and there is the long term. Okay, in the short term, every soul that needs cleansing goes through the cleansing process. Okay, and the cleansing process is that where they would go to Gehenna. I don't like to call it hell because I don't think that conjures up the right image, and it's a cleansing process for the soul. But ultimately, every soul is a chelek Elokai mimal. It's a piece of the divine. Okay, God gave a part of the divine, a part of His Spirit, and He put it in each and every person in this world. And therefore, all the righteous people in this world, right, will have a place in the world to come. Okay. Now that means that people that are evil, right, they will obviously have their comeuppance, but generally speaking, once they have gone through a cleansing process, then even they will have their place in the world to come. Okay, simply speaking. Now, what does it mean? What's the difference? So we've all got a place in the next world. So I remember one of my teachers many moons ago gave the analogy, and that was, if you imagine a football stadium, okay? Probably not the best analogy because there's no one in stadiums. Again, a bad analogy by Hackenbroch this morning. But nonetheless, imagine in the days gone by where you had football stadiums which were full, okay? And you had some action going on on the pitch below. So if we were to imagine that, obviously, the closer you are to the action, to where it's all happening, those are the best seats in the house, right? And the seats which are not so good are the seats which are far back, where you are behind a post, or you have a very hazy picture of what's going on, right? So obviously the greatest reward for us is to be able to bask in the divine presence. The closer we are to that divine presence, what we say, sitting by the throne of glory, the Kisei HaKavod, the greater, that is the greatest reward, right? So we have people that are in this world which are alive, and there are people in this world that are dead. Now that's a very strange thing to say, but they may be existing, but are they living? Because in Judaism and Jewish thought, living means that our soul is connected to our essence, to our core. So if we are connected, right, and we all know there are times where we feel very much alive, and there are some times where we feel that all the energy is sapped out of us, not just the physical energy, the psychological, the emotional energy. We're not feeling connected, we're not feeling engaged, we're not feeling inspired. And therefore, when we are connected to our core, there are those moments, those intangible moments, then we are very much alive. And therefore, there are people, therefore the transition from this world to the next world for good people, for righteous people that have done good, it's like they say, like removing a hair from milk. It's harmless. It's effortless. Whereas for somebody who is very physical, then obviously that is where they are. They're not going to want to be in the next world. They've lived this world as if it was the next world, and therefore they will have to go through a process of rehabilitating their soul. So that is the point that we want to make this morning, okay? So it's a really, really important point. So if someone were to ask you, where do we go after this? Well, we spend our time basking in the divine presence, in spirituality, right? Devoid of all the physical needs, the physical necessities, the physical realities, right? And how close we are and how much we enjoy that divine presence, which is our where we originate from, right? Where we want to be. So that will depend on how we create our world, our next world in this world. Are we clear? We are creating, right, our next world in this world, because the more we refine our souls, then the more we are going to be of interest and benefiting in the next world, in being closer to the divine presence. So really, this world is the next world, in that we are able to create it through living a godly life. Okay, we're going to move on. I know people have to get to work. Get to work means changing channels on the computer, or maybe it means closing the screen and doing some work. But everyone will do what they have to do, and it's exceptionally weird in my house this morning. If I can just share with you, it is eerily quiet. There is no one here for the first time in over 6 weeks. 6 months. Over 6 months. There is no one here. It is the weirdest feeling and sensation. As you can see, I'm rather excited about it. It feels like I am already in the next world. It is Gan Eden.